Good morning, everybody. We're back on the main channel. I wanted to start a little bit later today, give you guys a chance to kind of filter in. I don't know about you, but it's been hard to wake up in the morning. And so I wanted to give you guys an extra 15 minutes to pop on here. Now, if you've been wondering where we've been for the last week or so, I did a video a week ago saying we were going to be on the backup channel. So you might not have found us over there. But I'm trying to switch things up, trying to force YouTube's hand in terms of, doing their job, in terms of sending out notifications for people that subscribe to the channel. I know this is happening across the board, not just on this channel, but YouTube needs to change some things. And unless we complain about it, they're never going to fix the problem. When someone subscribes to your channel, the default should be that they get notified when you upload something. That should just be the default, and it's not. Because YouTube likes to force feed you. It's like force feeding cattle, right? They want to put everything in your feed that they want you to see and not what you signed up to see. So I did put in a complaint to YouTube, an official one, asking them to reconsider their policies and how they run the YouTube platform to favor the content creators that work so hard to bring you guys information, but then you don't ever get to see the information. So we're back on the main channel, and I will also be re-uploading this morning's show on the backup channel every day in the evening for an evening show. And sometimes I'll be there for those evening shows and sometimes I won't. But there will be an evening show every day as well, just a copycat of this morning's show, because some people like the evening shows better. Let's get into some of these headlines. I got a lot of headlines for you guys today. We're going to talk about Trump enabling the AI takeover. We're also going to talk about how paper checks are going away. The newest, the latest attack on, freedoms and financial privacy. This is a huge problem in America, financial privacy. People want to have privacy in their finances, and all that's going to go away as we're pushed into a digital transactions, digital society. We're going to talk a little bit about Denny's. They're closing some Denny's restaurants, and we're going to address the no tax on tip scam. And yes, it is a scam, so don't fall for it. If you are a server or know someone who's a server, do not fall for the no tax on tip scam, because it's absolutely a scam, and I'll explain all that to you a little bit later in the show today. So, good morning. Welcome back. So what am I on about this AI takeover? What is Trump doing with the AI takeover? Well, Trump says he will sign an executive order restricting states' ability to regulate AI. Now, why would a president do this? Well, the only reason a president would do this is because he knows that AI will be running everything on a federal level, and they want no interference. Anytime a government tells you they're going to put rules on something over the states, that's called a takeover. Let's read this. Trump says he'll sign an executive order restricting states' ability to regulate AI. Let's see what this guy has to say. Speaking in different language, so that's Sam Altman, but for some reason they're speaking a different language, so we're not going to play that. President Trump is done waiting for Congress when it comes to blocking state AI regulations. He said Monday he would sign an executive order aimed at ensuring that there's only one rule book for AI in the U.S., saying that the technology will be destroyed in its infancy if companies have to comply with different regulations across all 50 states. Now, let me give you one solid example of why states should be able to maintain their control over how they police AI. One solid example. The fact that you go onto Facebook, you go onto your feed, and literally half to 3/4 of the viral videos that you watch are artificial intelligence. That right there should be a huge red flag. They're literally altering our reality. It is an attack on what it means to be human. It is an attack on organic content. It's so funny because YouTube used to always be so big on organic. We need organic content. It has to come from, real people and then now here we are with AI. And everything's inorganic and nobody knows it's real anymore. And in fact, the inorganic content is what's popular now. It's what's taking over with millions of shares and millions of views and thumbs up and all this thing. So this is what we're up against. And if you think it's bad now, you just wait for 5 years. There will be no real people online anymore. Let's keep reading here. It says, we are beating all countries at this point in the race, but that won't last long if we are going to have 50 states, many of them bad actors, involved in rules and approval process. He's politicizing this again. Okay, this is the right-left paradigm again. They can't stop with this. Anytime someone opposes something he does, he just blames it on the Democrats, or he blames it on, oh, we're in a race. We're in a race with China. We got to beat China. And none of it's true. It's the fear tactic. Oh, if we don't do this, then China's going to win. Or, ooh, it's the Democrats opposing this. Real people don't oppose this because they trust me because I'm a Republican. You see the problem here? It says you can't expect a company to get 50 approvals every time they want to do something. That will never work. Well, here's the problem. I gave you a solid example of one area of artificial intelligence that is ruining our consciousness, ruining what it means, the definition of what it means to be human, ruining humans' a place in the social media sphere. Literally, and it's an attack on real people. I mean, there's no other way to shake this. And then we also have jobs. AI is taking over jobs. So what if a state wanted to say, hey, no, we're not going to allow AI to take over these certain jobs? Well, Trump says no. He's going to sign an executive order to shut all this down. Now, this should give you pause. Unfortunately, too many people are trapped in the web of lies, and they just won't wake up to this until it's too late, and then they'll still blame it on a Democrat. Now, let's keep going here. Denny's stores are closing. And here's what they're saying. They're saying they can't get people to show up for the night shifts. But the real elephant in the room is the reason why they can't get people to show up for night shifts is because there's less people eating out than ever before. If there's no people coming in, then they're not getting tips. So why do a night shift, right? People are paying more for less food. And Americans are opting out. Especially something like a Denny's, where you could probably cook up a similar meal in minutes and, pay literally 10% of the price that you're going to pay by eating out, and you don't have to tip. And people are just like, I'll just make my own food. Well, let's read this. Denny's is shutting down restaurants around the country. What's behind the closures? Denny's fans say the closures take away a valuable place to connect with others, especially for night workers. Now, I remember back in the day, I'm not really a night person, but back when I was younger, I would force myself to stay up and, partying, we all went through that stage. And Denny's was like the final destination of the night, right? Because Denny's was open. And I don't know about you, but I can't really eat after I've been drinking, but a lot of people do. They can. To me, I just want to go to bed. But this was something that we should do, hang out at Denny's for a while, right? It was kind of like a place to hang out before the party was over. So not all the restaurants are shutting down, but some of them. Denny's closures come after the American's diner chain said in 2024 investor presentation that it would shutter about 150 underperforming restaurants by the end of the year. Oh, look at, they closed 88 diners. 88, there's that number again. And they're planning on closing 70 to 90 more. So they're basically going after the underperforming Denny's across the nation. I think they mentioned one in Nebraska that they shut down. For those of you that live in Nebraska, your Denny's probably got shut down, and a few others. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be in some of the major metropolitan areas. They're not going to be shutting these down, or they may shut down a few here and there. But that's what's going on. The approachable one says most Denny's are filthy. Yeah, I remember that. I remember those filthy Denny's. Now, what else is going on? Well, if you hadn't heard by now, there's an attack on financial privacy. Pretty soon, now they're saying paper checks are on the way out. Let's listen to this guy.
UI. Basically, after more than 230 years, America's favorite 1-cent coin is finally being retired. The Trump administration feels that the cost to make the penny just doesn't make any sense anymore. Apparently, the cost to make the penny has more than tripled over the past 10 years. But of course, the desire to use pennies, other than as a paperweight at the bottom of a jar, it's plummeted. People are just not using pennies anymore. So the Trump administration says if they discontinue the penny, they can save Americans more than $50 million a year. The final...
Now, understand, and we'll get more into this whole nickeling and diming, because literally that's what's happening. We are being nickeled and dimed. Trump is like the accountant president. He's the first accountant president, right? We had the Doge. He's going through, he's like looking at every single little thing, the SNAP benefits. Look at, we spent all this money on Doge. Was anyone indicted? Did anyone go to jail for corruption? No. Now, it's not that there weren't corrupt individuals and that there wasn't money being wasted, but we're not seeing any results of that. Where's the balanced spreadsheet? Where are the people going to jail for being corrupt? Or was that just a big waste of money and time? You see, it really wasn't about that. It was really about converting our federal government to artificial intelligence. So they needed a cover story. The cover story was, we're going in for efficiency. But then really what they did is they fired a bunch of people and replaced it with AI, but they couldn't tell the public that because the public would freak out. And that's how they got their, quote, efficiency. But they're never going to show us those savings. Why? Because they don't want us to know that, hey, your job will be soon on the chopping block. Well, let's keep listening to this guy, because this nickeling and diming thing is real. And we're going to talk about tax on tips as well, because that's nickeling and diming. Let's watch.
5 pennies, they were minted, they were struck here in Philadelphia yesterday at one of the U.S. mints. No wonder people are searching for the penny. We love the penny, but it might be hard to get your hands on one of those final pennies because those ultimately will be auctioned off. Let's be real. The saddest part about all of this is that some of our favorite phrases will now need an upgrade. Instead of penny for your thoughts, it's going to be nickel for your thoughts. Instead of pennywise...
Okay, silly. He doesn't even talk about the checks. Let's keep reading here. First a penny, next paper checks. When the U.S. Mint stopped making pennies last month, blah, blah, blah. Government stopped sending out most paper checks to recipients as of the end of September. So those are gone now, from the government anyway. Part of an effort to fully modernize federal benefits payments. And on Thursday, the Federal Reserve put out a notice that suggested it is considering, but only considering, the winding down of checking services it now provides for banks. Whoa. Central Bank's statement said that as an alternative to winding down those services, it is mulling over more investment in its check processing services, but noted that that would come at a higher cost. Over time, check use has steadily declined. Digital payment methods have grown in availability and use, and check fraud has risen, said the notice from the Fed. Wow. A report from the Federal Reserve Bank, blah, 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 says 90% of surveyed customers said they prefer to use something other than a check for paying bills, and just 6% paid by check. Now understand that our government has covertly created a circumstance by which there is more check fraud. I know that might be hard for you to believe, but yes, our government does some of the fraud to disincentivize people from using checks. Okay. This is the whole purpose of even like internet hacking and things. It's our own government doing the hacking to force people into, different forms of verification, because really it's the government that wants everyone verified. Okay. So when you get hacked, understand that sometimes that's our own government doing that. So paper checks will soon become a thing of the past, as paper checks are now being canceled. Once the paper is gone and everything goes digital, this is when they'll begin to implement behavioral controls on your money. And that's where all this is headed. Now, let's get a MAGA update. As Laura Loomer comes unglued. I don't like any of these MAGA people, only because they're controlled opposition. And now we're seeing them all imploding. And now, all of a sudden, Laura Loomer, who dies on the hill of defending the country that shall not be named, and Trump and everyone else, they could do no wrong. There's always a logical explanation. It's 5D chess. All of a sudden now she's opposing Trump on Venezuela. This is weird, you guys. It's like a literal meltdown. Wow. First, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and now Laura Loomer. What does all this mean? And let me give you guys the update, and we'll get more into a Venezuela update. Laura Doomer, MAGA activists, took issue with the Department of Defense recent airstrikes against alleged drug smuggling boats on Monday, pointing out that the majority of the dangerous drugs that enter the U.S. do not come from Venezuela. Now, she's right. But why is she the one delivering the truth now all of a sudden? I almost feel like this will be the destruction of MAGA. Like they built MAGA and now they're going to destroy it because they're done. Trump has already been clear that he's thrown MAGA under the bus, but yet they still support him. They think he's playing 5D chess. They think, oh, he's just saying that. He's just saying he's done with us. It's 5D chess. Laura Doomer, top advisor to President Donald Trump, has long stood behind the policies of his administration. But in a post to X, she voiced concern that the Department of Defense may not be employing the most effective solutions to execute the administration's goal of stopping the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. Wow. Now understand that Trump is claiming to save lives by going into Venezuela. He's now touting this, saying, oh, every boat we blow up, we're saving 1,000 people, which is completely untrue. And I'll tell you why. Because it's not fentanyl that's on the boats. This is why they're destroying all the evidence. They don't want you to know that the boats are either fishing boats or they're full of cocaine. So they obliterate the evidence. So nobody really knows what's going on because they know that it's not full of fentanyl. Now, the data doesn't lie. If there were drugs on the boat, it's probably cocaine, which in some bizarre twist of irony is disproportionately used and consumed by Trump's billionaire and millionaire friends, not poor people. And cocaine overdoses are very small compared to total overdoses when it comes to fentanyl. It's like 5% or something compared to like 95% of the fentanyl overdoses. Now, let's get down to the truth of all this. If Trump really wanted to save lives, he would be bombing fentanyl targets in Mexico, or he would be picking a fight with China. So there you have it. World geopolitics in a nutshell. Nothing is what it seems. And now they've got liars telling the truth, which is just bizarre to me. I don't even know what their end game is with this. Maybe she's at the end of her run and they've got to cancel her next so she can quietly dip off the world stage. Who knows? Trump will probably disavow her, call her crazy, just like he did Marjorie Taylor Greene. And Doomer's made all of her money already. She's made her tens of millions, so she just taps out. And this is how it works. This is why you always have to stand on principle, not the latest popular figure. Because if you just follow what the popular figure says, they'll have you going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and you won't know the top from the bottom. Now, what else is going on? Well, we have another robot fail. This is kind of funny. Let me check in with you guys. Another robot fail, AI robot fail. Good morning, everybody. You're like, what is Casey doing on the main channel? If you just tuned in, we're back on the main channel. We did a little test for a week to see what was going on. And now we're here. We're back here. So what's going on with this robot? Now, some of what you're going to see next, let's see here, is people are trying to say this is proof that these robots are nothing more than an elaborate parlor trick. That they're basically just remote control robots and there is no AI running the robot. I mean, that might be true. Tesla Optimus falls in Miami demo. Hand movements sparks remote operation debate. Oh my gosh. Lord help us. If there was any question that Optimus uses teleop for their robots, here as clearly has a guy take the headset off and it falls over. Nothing hilarious though. Let's see here. Bam! Wow. The footage highlights unusual hand movements made as it fell, which closely resembles the gestures of somebody removing a headset. The clip that prompted discussion about whether the robot was being remotely operated rather than acting autonomously. Last week, Tesla also shared a new Optimus update showing improved balance, coordination, and gait, following earlier progress in walking, handling objects, and posture training. Optimus autonomy is questioned. So there you have it. Let's read the comments because this will be funny. Oh my goodness. Let's read the robot jokes. Tesla expects Optimus to move toward mass production, with Musk estimating a future price between 20 and 30,000. Yeah, right. There is so much more out there that needs resolved than a robot. It's really not being serious. Tesla, whose stock is a minefield, is attempting to sell the public on them not being a car company, but an innovator of all science fiction future tech. While this may one day be the case, they need people to believe now. They need cash to make things happen, so they're lying about the progress they're making. Okay, let's see here. I want to see some jokes here. It's got to be a good joke here. Are these robots going to do all the work that Musk says we won't be doing in 20 years as we move to jobless society with auto income? So you guys have hope. There are people that are awake out there. If you need a good laugh or you need to feel some hope, of course, go to the Bible first. But if you need to know that at least people are awake to all this, go read in the comment sections of some of these feeds and videos and things. And you'll see, even in very public places or videos that are unattached to the truth community, like if you want to have a good laugh, go into like a NASA video that's published in like Facebook and read the comments, and you'll have hope. You'll realize that people are waking up, okay? And you'll get a lot of good information too about the truth about all of this. For some reason, they're not canceling comments anymore. So we're getting the truth about all this. But this is crazy. This comment says, all I can think of is opening scenes of the original Terminator movie. No, thank you. All this is from the guy who said we'd be getting our self-driving cars within the year about 5 years ago. Tesla is a huge scam. More than 90% of its valuation is based on this robot, which is years behind what China has right now. Tesla's always been more hype than substance. Doesn't surprise me if they're being deceptive. Wow. That is wild. Now, what else is going on, you guys? Let's get into some of these other stories today. Now, this particular story makes my case that, Trump's unpardonable sin of drugs is all fake, because he's pardoning a drug lord while claiming to be tough on drugs. And then so they asked him, they're like, dude, that's a little bit hypocritical. And listen to what he said.
For fentanyl trafficking into the U.S.?
Sure, I would.
You pardoned former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez and let him out of prison, even though he was convicted in a massive international drug trafficking scheme. How is that zero tolerance on drug trafficking?
Well, I don't know him, and I know very little about him, other than people said it was like a Obama-Biden type setup, where he was set up. He was the president of the country. The country deals in drugs, like probably you could say that about every country. And because he was the president, they gave him like 45 years in prison. And there are many people fighting for Honduras, very good people that I know, and they think he was treated horribly, and they asked me to do it, and I said, I'll do it.
So there you go. He doesn't even know the guy. Unbelievable. There's more to this than meets the eye, and we're not in Venezuela for drugs. Now, as I said, because they're losing control of the narrative and people are awake, they're probably going to shift the narrative and say, oh, this is about China. This is about getting control of our hemisphere, the Monroe Doctrine. We need to get Venezuela's oil because Maduro's a dictator. They're going to start that. There could be some false flags. They might even make Maduro gas his own people or make it look like he did or something, right? And they'll just shift gears, and then people will all forget about the drugs. Because as I said, let me say it again. If Trump was serious about doing something about the drug problem, he would be taking out targets in Mexico. Even though Mexico says you can't, he would do it anyway. Or we'd have the fleet parked off of the coast of Baja, Mexico. And we'd have a highly militarized border all along, our southern border. And with drones flying everywhere 24/7. And there would be no fentanyl coming over the border in Mexico. Or we'd pick a fight with China. We say, China, we're not going to trade with you anymore. No more trade until you stop sending fentanyl here. And we would starve China by simply stopping trade with China. If he was serious about drugs, because that's where all the fentanyl's coming from. But this has nothing to do with your life and saving your life from fentanyl. Has zero to do with it. Now I'm going to give you another example of why this is the case. No tax on tip. Another bait and switch honey trap. Let me explain it to you. Let's get the sound on here if I can. Where's our sound? Oh, here it is.
President Trump said, I'm a mom, a wife, I homeschool my 2 brilliant children, and the no tax on tips is incredible. No tax on overtime is incredible for my...
It's incredible. Yes, it is incredible. Incredible means unbelievable.
husband, and it all comes back to our family. It saves us, and it's for the future of our children. And it's
the future of your children getting taxed on all their tips.
Been such a blessing to be home with them and to have them here with me tonight. And
now, where do they find these people? Well, this woman might be a real person, but what I believe is happening, these people get drawn into the right-left paradigm, and they think something sounds good, but they're not really thinking it through. You still have to report the tips. What are you talking about, Casey? Well, the IRS estimates that historically only 45% of tips are reported on tax filings. Ding, ding, ding. Are you awake yet? That's 45% of tips are reported on tax filings. Most people don't report their cash tips. And with cash about to go away, guess what? That will be an undue burden on servers and people that make money off of tips. And they're preparing for that. How are they preparing for it? Well, let's break this down. Let's figure out what this is really about. Because if you take the bait, you will be part of the reason why everybody who gets cash tips will one day be cornered and not be getting those cash tips anymore. If you're receiving cash tips that you are not reporting, you're already not paying taxes on tips, right? And if you take the bait and you do report that income, because you're like, oh, now I can be legit. Now I can report my tips. Because Trump says he's not going to tax those tips. Well, once you do that, once you cross that line, it will forever be attached to you. And even if one year you don't make those tips, the IRS will say, well, last year you made $15,000 in tips. And you're still working in that industry according to your tax return. So where did your tips go? And they will tax you once they undo the no tax on tips rule, because it will be undone. They will tax you on that income even if you didn't make it. What you're doing by reporting your tips, because, oh, no tax on tips, I can report my cash tips now, is you're giving them data so that the controllers can justify one more reason to end cash. Here's how it's going to go. wow, thanks to Trump's, no cash on tips, 20 million more Americans reported their cash tips, which represented a possible revenue increase for the IRS of $25 billion that we could be getting in taxes. And then a Democrat comes in office, they reverse this. And now cashless happens, and they're like scraping in more billions from hard-working people, from servers. So they're going to see the revenue, because you have to report the income, right? You have to report the tips, even though they don't tax you. But then they can easily undo this. And they're going to use the data to say, see, this is why we need to go cashless. All these people who were getting tips and weren't reporting it. Now, let me give you an example of what's happening, because this is all headed in this direction. This was noticeable for me. Now, I don't eat out a lot, but since I've been here with my mother, it's kind of our time to hang out. Went to Denny's the other day, by the way. And now they give each server a mobile transaction register. It's like a little mini electronic device. You can slide the card, and they want the tips to be digital. Cash isn't really incentivized. I mean, you can still leave cash, but it has to be documented onto this device, so that the person who you would normally put cash on the table can't pocket it. And so it would have to be reported, right? So this is why I don't buy this no tax on tip, because they're already trying to collect every single little bit of data on cash tips that they can. They're forcing the hand of the servers. They're cornering them into, there is no more cash. Now, if you work at a small diner, I'm sure there is still, cash that people leave on the table for a tip. And maybe that diner doesn't require you to report that. But I can imagine within a few short years, this will be mandatory. And then when they do away with cash, it will absolutely be mandatory, because people won't have cash to leave you. So this is about the government tracking every transaction. They hate cash transactions because there's a strong likelihood that it won't be reported. And believe it or not, the real reason that our government legalized cannabis and went after prostitution and regulated other cash businesses was not because of some moral imperative, but it was simply to collect the revenue on taxes. They can't stand cash businesses. So don't fall for the honey trap. Don't fall for it, because here's how it's going to go. Servers are going to come forward in mass, another honey trap, to report their now tax-free tips, thinking, oh, I can come clean, I can be legit. The data comes in, and then the no tax on tips is dropped at some point. Now you get caught holding the bag. The fact is they aren't getting taxed on tips anyways at this point, not on cash tips, as I just showed you. Now, if you don't think Trump is capable of doing a rope-a-dope like this, look at what he already did with Doge and cutting the SNAP benefits and nickeling and diming Americans since day one. It's the little people who are getting nickeled and dimed, not the millionaires and billionaires. Okay? They absolutely want the billions in revenue from our hardworking servers. They absolutely want that revenue. So never believe a snake. And if you think that, oh, Casey, everybody should pay their fair share, and if people aren't reporting their tips, that's not fair. Well, was it ever fair to tax a tip? I don't think so. It was never fair to tax a tip. It's a tip. That's the whole definition of it. And a lot of servers only work for tips. You guys, DoorDash people, they work for tips. They're already making nothing. I'm hearing horror stories of people who work all day, and once they fill up their tank and they're driving around, wear and tear on the car. It's the biggest scam in American history. Basically creating an entire service society where people are basically working as slaves. And if people decide not to tip, they basically wasted their entire day and they broke their car, which eventually all that's going to balance out when you have to go buy a $20,000 car. It's unbelievable what they've done to our society. So if you're getting food delivered or groceries, please tip the person. Now, I don't do DoorDash, but I know a lot of you do. And look, I'm looking out for you guys, okay? You know, people get mad at me because I expose the corruption, but you don't hear Trump talking about stuff like this. I'm on your side. Don't kill the messenger. I'm looking out for you guys because we're all down in here together, right? So, you know, if you're having stuff delivered, understand these people make almost no money by driving to your house and delivering you something, okay? And so it's best that you try to tip those people. Now, okay, so let's think about solutions, okay? Because it's not just about complaining, okay? We always try to come up with solutions here. What Trump should have done here with these no tax on tips is to make it unnecessary to report your tips on your tax return. Decriminalize tip reporting, right? Simple. The same way they should have decriminalized cannabis. Don't legalize it, because what that means is reporting and the IRS and regulations and all these things, right? Decriminalize tip tax reporting. In other words, make it unnecessary for someone to even have to report a tip, because the definition of a tip is that it's a gift. A tip is a gift, you guys. Let's cut down to the chase here. And if you don't have to report gifts on your tax return, or they're not taxable at least, then why should you have to report tips? So I'm looking out for you guys, as I always do. And our sneaky politicians constantly looking for ways to nickel and dime you and I, while the billionaires and millionaires get away with whatever they want. So, all right, I'm back in the chat. Thanks everybody for showing up today. Good morning. Marcy says, I hate everything. I feel like that some days. I just hate everything, right? Yeah, expose the grift. All right. Casey, all news reports reporting this flu case rise, saying about hospitals. The window is closing fast. Yes, Snowball. Gifts are income, says Skies Over Spokane. Trump's Peace Committee. Predator drones. Barack Obama. Yes, Tim. Doesn't matter if you call it a gift, it's still income. I disagree with that. 100%. Really? Government has that much power? Can't even give something to somebody without the government with their little dirty, grubby little hands in it? No thanks. See, we're the ones giving away our rights and freedoms because we believe they're stupid rules. How come only plebes are punished for making income? Yep. You guys have watched entire industries be destroyed, obliterated. That should be the word for today. Obliterated by our government. The cannabis growing industry. Good farmers. Again, I don't partake in cannabis. These were good people growing something that was about as close to the natural state as it could be. Completely obliterated. The DoorDash business used to be profitable. I had friends that made money doing, picking up people, doing Uber and DoorDash. Uber, I had a friend that made like $80,000 in a year doing Uber. And he worked his butt off, sun up to sundown. He worked in LA. He was able to even buy a house in Bakersfield because he was so successful. His industry has been obliterated. I don't even know if he's making half that much now with twice the work. Why? What's the common theme here? Our government can't stand when a new, industry, a grassroots industry. We're not talking billionaires, because the billionaires, they're making their money and more money every year, turning into trillionaires. It's the little people who are willing to get out and work their tails off because they see something coming up and they're like, ooh, I could be an Uber driver. All I got to do is work. And they work, they make their money, and boom, within 5 to 10 years, our government obliterates the industry with overregulation. So these are just the facts, you guys. Now, how much longer are we going to put up with this? How much longer are we going to allow this with our, like, saying, oh, yeah, you should get taxed on tips and gifts. Oh, there should be regulation. We're doing it to ourselves until we say no, hands off. If someone wants to pull up in their truck and make tacos out of the truck because that's the only way they can get by, because they're really good at cooking, and they want to sell tacos out of the back of their truck until they make somebody sick, they should be left alone. And the people that go buy the tacos from the back of the truck, it's their responsibility to go, do those look like good tacos? Well, how did you make those? Ask some questions. Where did you make them? Person will probably sit there and explain it to you. Where'd you buy the meat? Why are they treating us like little babies? It's not because they care about us. It's about control. They can't stand people who make cash. Sorry, but that's the truth. We're not talking about lazy people just, picking up cash out of the street. We're talking about hardworking people who are barely getting by to begin with. You get a little cash, and we're all going to tax that. Meanwhile, Trump's giving away America to foreigners. $1 trillion contract with Saudi Arabia to build data centers in America, selling us out to Qatar and every other country. And they're going to nickel and dime us on some cash tips that someone had to work all day for? Are you kidding me? You're okay with that? I'm not okay with that. I am not okay with that at all. So, yes, I love street tacos too, and I wish those were in America. You can go across the border and get street tacos. I think the worst thing that ever happened to anybody was they got a free diuretic. Nobody ever died from eating a street taco, contrary to popular belief. But that's what they want you to believe. Oh, we got to protect you. You're one taco away from dying. You could die if you eat a street taco. Oh my gosh. We get what we deserve sometimes. So sometimes we have to have tough talk on this channel to help you understand what's really going on. Because otherwise, if you're living in fear and you want to give away your rights and freedoms, then we get what we deserve, right? So somebody's got to stand up. Street tacos in SoCal. You guys, in order to operate a restaurant these days, you got the health department climbing in through windows. Have you ever been into a hotel lately? Where's the health department in some of these hotels run by foreigners in our country? I mean, you can't give these hotel rooms away. You couldn't pay me to like if they said, hey, we're going to give you $100 to stay the night in this hotel. I would say, no, thanks. So we live in backwards world where everything's backwards. Oh, yeah. But yet, if you open up a restaurant where you're making cash, you got three health department visits a week. You're getting rid up because they found one cockroach in a corner that's been dead for 5 years. Oh, there's a rat 2 blocks away crawling in a trash can. Oh, sorry. Close the restaurant. It's unbelievable. Backwards world. Anyway, it's been a while since we had a good rant, so I figured speak some truth today. All right. So, UT says, I hate property tax. It's a scam. It means I don't own my property and my house is paid off. I agree with you 100%. Fortunately, I live in a place where the property taxes are so cheap that it's almost free. And I've encouraged people to look into that. A bustling economy isn't always necessarily a good thing. Okay, it's not always a good thing because high property values means high taxes. Get low property values in a decent area with good people, and now you're only paying a little bit for taxes. I talked to a friend, and they have a house in San Jose. They're paying $10,000 a year in property taxes. And if someone were to purchase that home, their property taxes would be readjusted to $30,000 a year. You guys, that's over $2,000 a month in property taxes. Now, granted, not everybody wants to live in California or in the Bay Area, but this is what's going on. How is that sustainable? How is that sustainable? And then here I am in rural Arkansas. Well, I'm not back there yet. I'm still in Stockton, but rural Arkansas, it's like $300 a year. It's like nothing. I still disagree with it, but it is what it is. So, all right. Them hotel are nasty. Blood mattress, bed bugs. Yeah, they're manufacturing the high property taxes so they can raise your taxes. Yes. And they tell you, oh, look, your investment. It's, you guys, we live in a Ponzi scheme. Okay, let me explain it to you. No one will talk to you like this because it's not widely known. We live in a Ponzi scheme. Oh, okay, the first house I ever bought. They're like, buy the most house you can. Why? Because you're going to get the interest write-off. Okay, but here's what they don't tell you. All that interest write-off that you're going to get, which still forces you to continue to make a high amount of money in your income, the little bit of interest that you get to write off for your mortgage is going to be chewed right back up in property taxes that increase every year. It almost breaks even. So what are you really gaining from that? Not to mention, you're now carrying the full burden of inflated home repair costs. Some estimates say that you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars a year on just simple home repair maintenance and costs. Okay, going to need a new roof, going to need a new water heater, you're going to need a new floor, you're going to need a new kitchen, you're going to need whatever. Okay, and if you buy the house brand new, you're already paying an inflated cost for the house. Not to mention, the first several years of your mortgage, you're paying all interest. You're not even paying down the principal. So now you're in a hole. And in addition to that, you're now carrying the full burden of all the liability to keep maintaining those payments over the course of 30 years, of which about 500 different things can happen to you before you're able to meet that commitment. Health, job, divorce. Do you see the problem now? When more house is supposed to be better, more house is not better. Less house is better. Reduce liability, reduce taxes. If you can, pay the house off because it's less house. Now you're not paying any interest. And yeah, you don't get the write-off, but as I just demonstrated to you, you start off in the hole. Even though it seems like you're paying less taxes, you're in the hole. Let me give you an example. Let me give you a straight example. Back in 2000 and I want to say 2 or 3, gosh, was it 2003? I owned a home in California. It was my second home. Bought it for $275. Home went up to $450 in value. Told my ex-wife at the time, we're never going to see this amount of money ever again in our life, so we should probably sell this house and go rent. She said, no way, we're not doing that. I wasn't going to argue with her because that's the kind of marriage I was in. I wasn't the boss. So, long story short, the house, of course, the bubble burst, and the house went back down to its normal value. But the whole time, I think I was making, I was a pharmaceutical rep. I was making, I think, $65,000 or $75,000 a year base salary, and then with commissions and what else? Benefits, because it was full medical coverage for the family, and it was super super cheap. It was like $10 copays back then. Remember those days? $10 copays, and I was probably clearing six figures with all of those benefits. Right? I had a company car. I didn't have to pay for gas or anything like that. So there were some benefits. And at the time, my mortgage payment, I believe, was a little over $2,000, maybe $2,100. Okay. So, yeah, I saved a little bit on taxes, maybe $3,000 or $4,000 a year in taxes, but then I was paying that much in interest for the mortgage, and above, about the same. So, what did I gain from that? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I could have rented the same place for $1,500 a month. So I was paying more in mortgage than I could have been renting. And when you're renting, the landlord assumes all the responsibility for repairs and all those things. Do you see the problem? Do you see the problem with our Ponzi scheme that we call mortgages in America? Now, I'm not saying there isn't a time and a place for a mortgage, but when you're in an inflated market where the values are so high, it just doesn't make any sense at all. You're better off probably renting in that instance. So the Bible is correct when it says to get out of the beast. Okay, when you play in the sandpit of the devil, you're going to get burned eventually. The best thing to do is get out of that system. Don't get a mortgage if you can at all help it. Find a way to be in where maybe the property values aren't as high, and you can actually live within your means. Now, I know some people have different experiences. People have shared with me, they're like, well, I'm glad I have a mortgage, and I think it's the best thing, and you're crazy for telling people that. Well, maybe that's because you never got a divorce. You had a consistent job that paid for 30 years straight. Maybe you work for the state or the county. You never got sick, or your husband never got sick to where, he couldn't pay the mortgage. See all the things that have to go right that almost never go right? 50 to 60% of people get a divorce. I would say an even higher percentage have some kind of spell where they get sick over the course of 30 years, where they have to be out of work for 6 months. There's like so many things that can go wrong. Not to be a doomer, but it's the truth statistically. Okay. So if you want to play the bet and go for it, that's up to you. I'm just giving you the information so you can give you pause to get you to reconsider some things. Maybe you're a person that said, I'll never, ever, ever live out in the woods in the county. Well, there's something to it, you guys. In terms of a stress-free life. So I'm just trying to help out here. All right. I'm just trying to help. Now let's go back in the chat here. Let me get off that soapbox. Oh my gosh. It's crazy. Mortgage divorce casualty here. So there you go. They want 50-year mortgages now. Yep. Trump's talking about that. Thanks, Solemn Peace. All right. Did you ever live in Louisiana? No, never lived there. I'm in Connecticut where things are very expensive, but my mortgage tax insurance is less than half what it costs to rent a place like mine. Well, that's great. Now, if you were to buy that mortgage now, Snowball, we all know the truth. For whatever place you have, your taxes would be readjusted, right? You'd have to carry mortgage insurance, and you'd be mortgaging the full amount, right? So the amount that you're mortgaging is very important in this equation. Yes, I see what you're saying, but if we were actually do apples to apples, it would not make sense for you to do that. Now, let's see here. The Borg is taking over. Third world countries better living, maybe. Yeah, I don't think so. Sister G. I lived in a Western country in France for a year and a half. I loved it, but I was happy to come home. For various reasons. Yeah, taxes alone would eat you up if you had to mortgage now. Are you kidding? Connecticut has the highest taxes in like any of the 50 states for home mortgages. So, yeah. Now, if you're only mortgaging $100,000 of that total value of that house, yeah, you're better off. But it's about how much you're mortgaging. I bought a small house. It's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 980 square feet, 15 years, says Bill Bradley. Now, no one's going to tell you this. You know, you go onto these YouTube channels. Oh, I'm an economic advisor. Right? The key here is to keep you a slave. Okay? Anything that forces you into debt slavery for 30 years to where you have to perform and outperform. No, you can't just be status quo. You can't just keep making the same amount of money that you do because the costs around you are going up every single year. You have to make more money. You have to make 10% more each year to stay on track. And, you know, these people, you know, these economic people, I don't know, some of the names of these people who pretend like they're the gurus on economics and they try to make it simple for the simple people. They're not telling you any of this. But it's the truth, and I know because I've been through it twice. Lost my shorts on my first mortgage. Lost my shorts on the second mortgage. First mortgage was simply because I got a new job. It was time to sell the house. Well, wrong timing. Home values are down. Oh, well, the job isn't going to wait for you. You got to move. Sorry. So I had to literally take out a loan. I had to take out a personal loan. I had to mortgage my car in order to get out of that property. It wasn't a lot. It was like $6,000. But it was, you know, I'm literally paying to leave the property. And if you don't have the money, which most Americans don't, they're paycheck to paycheck, to weather these kinds of ups and downs in the economy, there's another thing that's going to burn you. When it's time to sell your house and you can't sell it, what do? Got to sell the house, right? Angel says, thanks for the show about mold. You're welcome. We have a lot of shows about mold. I think I have a whole playlist on mold, actually. We were talking about it before it became an epidemic in America. I think we started talking about it in 2020. So if you want to know more about mold, you can check out the playlist on that. There's almost nobody I know that's unaffected by mold now. It's taking over everybody. So okay. All right, you guys. Well, anything else you guys want to talk about? We will be live tomorrow, likely. So there's two options, okay? For living. Living is one of our biggest expenses, right? And it's getting worse every year. If you can't, you know, find an area where the property values are realistic, then the next best thing is to rent a very simple dwelling in a place where the rents aren't that high. I would say a studio shouldn't cost any more than $600 a month. That way the landlord takes on all the responsibility. And yeah, your rent might go up over the course of several years, but anything more than $600 a month for a studio apartment is just way too much money. So all right. Well, I guess that's it, everybody. Pablo says you're dreaming. Okay. Expand on that. Well, that's because you live in an area. Again, it goes back to where you live. There's plenty of people that have paid $600 a month for a studio in parts of the country where they don't have to be near all the cool things there are to do. You guys, the town I live in doesn't even have a movie theater, a real one anyway. It's a big screen TV in a strip mall. And yes, there are rents for $600 a month, studios for $600 a month where I live. So it depends on where you want to live. Yes, if you live next to a major metropolitan area or city or even in the outskirts of one, you're never going to find rent for that cheap. I'm telling you what the rents should be, not what they are. Okay? $600, between $600 to $1,000 a month is the most anybody should pay for a studio, for a one-bedroom studio where you walk in a room and there's a kitchen and a bed. But we live in a Ponzi scheme. So rents get driven up. As soon as someone finds a cool spot to live, everybody else comes. And because of the way our economic system works, it prices everybody out. How is this sustainable? What happened to normalcy? What happened to, long-term security? There is none when it comes to renters. And I'm giving you two options. Either find a cheap place to rent or find an area where you can have a really cheap mortgage or, essentially try to pay it off or save that money. We went through this whole scenario. We did a minimum wage and we looked at how long it would take for someone to save enough money to buy a property. Remember we did that whole thing? And it took some discipline. I think it took 2 years of savings at minimum wage to actually save enough money to buy a property, to save, I can't remember the amount we came up with. Was it $100,000? We showed you how to do it. And I know because I did it myself, you guys. I'm the proof of that. But, it takes discipline, the discipline that a lot of people don't have, because we have vices, don't we? We have vices. We have things we feel like we need to have. People criticize the immigrants, but they come from a place where they're living off of beans and rice. So a lot of what they're able to achieve in America, now I don't believe any legal should be able to get a mortgage in America because they're not American yet, right? But that still happens. That's still happening, actually. But some of these people, they come from very disciplined lives because they've been forced to be disciplined. They've been forced to not be able to go to a movie or not be able to eat out or not be able to maintain a vice, which would be cigarettes or cannabis or alcohol. And so they're able to be disciplined. And this is how they're able to achieve some of the things that they achieve that we see as unfair. How did that person, get a mortgage? Or how do these people doing this? They're coming and stealing our stuff. But the fact of the matter is that, regardless of how you feel about that, and I'm not telling you how to feel about that, it comes from the mindset of discipline. That a lot of Americans, we just don't have that discipline. We just don't. We can't forego immediate gratification on one level or another to achieve a long-term goal. And I don't blame people. I blame the programming. We live in a society now. I was talking to my mom a little bit about this last night because she was like, without getting specific, we were talking about a particular individual that, there's a generation of individuals that can't quite get it together financially. And my mom and I were talking about why that's the case. And I said, Mom, we grew up in an era where there wasn't social media, where there weren't people posting all their trips to different countries. People that, wait, you look on their profile and it says they work at Wendy's, but yet they're on a cruise or they're here or they're there. And then what happens is people go on to social media and they go, oh, how is that person able to do that? I want to go do that, right? And then there's this whole set of unreal expectations that we put on ourselves to keep up with the Joneses, and now it's all on display. And now if you're not posting pictures of you, in your trip to so-and-so on your social media, then you feel left out. So then what people do is they end up, and you guys, they have now where you can You can put a cruise on like a year standby. Oh, you just sign up now. You have a year to pay it off, right? So they do this. Now you're in debt. Okay. So yes, the rat race has been amplified by social media. It's put everything on display, so everyone knows everyone's business and what they're doing. This wasn't the case, when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. Everyone's business was not on display. People talked about things they did, but you didn't see detailed. I mean, I guess if they took pictures and brought it back, but I don't remember opening up a book going, oh, this was my cruise from, that we went on this year. And even that, it's different. You're looking at pictures. You're not seeing videos and people like, ooh, look at me. Look at all the lights. Look at me. I'm in the streets of so-and-so. So it's different now. It's amplified. So again, I don't blame people. I blame the structure, the system that's set up. And you can say there are certain good things that came about by technology and social media and everyone with all their business online all the time. But then there's a lot of bad things, aren't there? Like the example that I just gave of, people now feeling left out of life. They feel like they don't compete or compare. Their self-esteem is lower now. Okay. I believe social media has ruined intimacy and dating. There's so many options for people now that no one wants to, they can't see the good from the bad. And inevitably, when you take the actual, the platform of the digital world, who's always going to win? It's going to be the people who are the best producers of the digital world, right? They're the ones that are going to capture the attention. So it's all the wrong attention. So it's the ones going, look at me, right? And then so we go through these failed relationships over and over again, and then people become damaged. They're like, oh, but then you tell them, well, not all people are like that. And then they're like, well, I'm done anyway. I'm tapping out. So it's ruined people's relationships. People have burned out from it. This is why people can't come together. Now, the Bible talks about this. In the last days, there will be no natural affection. Wow, it's almost as if the Bible predicted social media, the cause of no natural affection. People don't know how to have affection for one another anymore. They don't know how to fall in love. So, and some people could say, oh, that's a good thing. Everything's more practical now. Look, I understand that side of the argument. But there is such a thing as emotion and feelings, and that's kind of lacking now. Things have changed, haven't they? Yes, they're basically setting this whole thing up for sex bots. You're absolutely right. I mean, I didn't want to go there, but that's exactly where everything's headed. People are just tired of the emotional input that it takes and the effort that it takes to actually, connect with people. And people are wary. They're almost too patient. And so what happens is, it's going to come to a point where people are just like, you know what? Time for a sex bot. And people will just walk right into it. They'll be like, oh, this is way easier. I'll just put this thing on a payment plan and have it paid off in 2 years, right? Instead of a cruise. They'll be, why go on a cruise? Let's cut to the chase. And this will be our future. I'm almost 100% positive that this is where it's all headed. So, and that's going to get really weird, right? Then the aggression's going to come out. Once people are all hooked up to their bot, they're just going to be really angry. They're just going to be hostile. People are just going to be hostile. And then when their bot breaks, what are they going to do then? The whole service industry, they're going to have Geek Squad for sex bots, right? I mean, this is going to be a bad movie, you guys. They could do a whole movie on this. The future of America, the future of the world. It's crazy. So anyway, the lawlessness has caused many hearts to grow cold. I will agree 100% with you on that. They've already showed it in the movies. Yes. Yeah, our society, it needs prayers. That's for sure. Number of older women are turning to relationships with other women. It's really sad, says Persephone. Flu thing. Well, say in case causes strike. Okay, thanks, Angel. All right. All right, you guys. I love each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your day. I hope something I said today helps you to understand the truth about the reality that we live in, helps you prepare and mitigate risk in your life. You know, part of why I'm probably the happiest I've been in my life in many ways, but not in others, is that I've finally learned how to stop walking into the devil's traps, and I'm able to mitigate risk in my life. And so therefore I don't have a lot of risk in my life right now, but it took me till get in my 50s to figure it out. Because as a young man, I just kept walking into all the traps. So there, you can find happiness. A lot of the unhappiness we experience is because we're walking into traps. So this show is just more of a guide for all of us to get together and talk about all this stuff. I don't have all the answers, okay? But together we can all talk about getting down to the bottom of the answers, right? All right, I'll let you guys go. Take care. Much love.